I'm Brian Bajek, Visiting Assistant Professor of Theology at Marquette University, and I've spent the past few months desperately wishing that certain elements of Lonergan's thought weren't so relevant to our current cultural climate. Recent headlines read like case studies in individual, dramatic, group, and general bias, and those latter two have compounded at a rate that can really only mean one thing. We're reaping the fruits of both shorter and longer cycles of decline. Old evils naively dismissed as dead are back with a vengeance, because they never really left. We're also witnessing widespread ecological destruction, along with economic deregulation. If you want examples of a civilization digging its own grave with a relentless consistency, 2020's got you covered, and frankly, that's just within my own American context. The global situation is also discouraging. Still, decline isn't the element of Lonergan's thought that's been resonating most with me recently. The insight that keeps resurfacing is that decline always sows the seeds for its own reversal. I found myself rereading Lonergan these past few weeks, appreciating a virtue reverberating throughout his thought: hope. It may not be present in many headlines, but I find a newfound witness to it in my students. My position at Marquette is a new one. My previous teaching role was in a seminary, so I'm adjusting back to being in an undergrad classroom, and I'm pleased to confirm something I'd previously only thought might be the case. Despite a few outliers, my students tend to resonate on the frequencies of Greta Thunberg, Me Too, and Black Lives Matter. I recently asked students in both foundational and upper division courses to write about an experience that profoundly moved them, and I was floored by how many passionately reflected upon demonstrations calling for equality, inclusion, and reform. Unlike many my age who internalized the toxic suggestion that caring isn't cool, the majority of my students are already socially conscious and open-minded. Engagement isn't the issue. The difficult task, I suspect, will be illuminating the relevance of theological and philosophical frameworks within the unique horizons of Gen Z. For this, I think Lonergan's an unlikely but useful ally. More than many other thinkers, I suspect he would share my conviction that the onus is on us to transpose and adapt, helping students grow as the creative originating values they are. For all of his talk of decline, Lonergan is an irreducibly theological thinker, so he doesn't believe decline gets the final word. He stresses that grace is always operatively inviting us to unprecedented solutions to injustice. All we have to do is cooperate, and that cooperation is itself graced. Authenticity may be a precarious project, but we're not in it alone. In the face of so much uncertainty, it can be easy to overlook that God is infinitely creative and that grace is irrepressibly inclined toward the unexpected. Lonergan knew this, and I think it's part of the reason that his thought can be so creatively applied in so many fields. Most of my students study subjects outside the presumed limits of theological or philosophical thinking. These same students are inherently skeptical of the false sacralization of institutional idolatry and fundamentalism, and they want resources for meaning-making beyond the false dichotomies they've inherited as cultural frameworks. Here, I can't help but see the reason for using Lonergan. His thought and Bob Doran's helped me overcome similar stumbling blocks, and I know how transformative and empowering that was for me. This is why, in the face of everything happening, I believe decline has already sown the seeds for its own reversal. Those seeds are going to grow, tended by those of us already seeking change, yes, but also by those whom we now have the opportunity to teach. Though the results of this project are still indeterminate, I agree with Lonergan's assertion that it is upwardly directed, healed and elevated by the grace prompting this new generation to say, "Time's up, change is needed now." For me, this is more than enough reason for hope.